The midnight sun race. The call of the wind. The Arctic air, laden with fine needles of ice, cut every inch of exposed skin, but for Kael, it was only a familiar caress. His thick gray, black and white fur, a legacy of generations of surviving the cold, was perfect armor, sitting like a statue of ebony and silver atop a hill overlooking the valley. He watched as the midnight sun, a titan that refused to rest, bathed the vast Siberian tundra in a diffuse, eternal golden light. All was still, but Kael's heart beat was racing. Something about the wind was different that night. Not only did it carry the familiar scents of snow-covered pines, wild mint, and fresh snow, it blew from far away, laden with a new promise, a salty, deep, damp, and completely unfamiliar scent tangled in the air currents. It was the scent of the sea, an ancient whisper, a voice that all huskies carry engraved in their souls, echoed within him, louder than any bark. Beyond, discover, run, your blood remembers it. Even if your eyes haven't seen it. Kael leaped to his feet, his powerful muscles tense with uncontrollable emotion. He looked down, where the dim lights of his village, Yakutskoy, flickered timidly. There, in a small log cabin, his human, Anya, slept peacefully, trusting that her guardian was watching over her. A brief flash of doubt crossed his mind, but it was swept away by a wave of pure instinct. With a last snort that condensed into a cloud of steam, Kael made his decision. He buried his nose in the snow, taking in a last whiff of home, and set off down the hill, into the unknown. His great adventure, the one the winds would sing of, began at that moment. The Forest of Whispers. Entering the dense forest of Siberian fir trees was like crossing the threshold of an ancient and forgotten realm. The perpetual light of the midnight sun barely filtered through the intertwined branches, creating a play of light and shadow that danced across the thick layer of virgin snow. Kael moved forward with instinctive caution, every one of his senses alert. His ears, pricked like radars, swiveled, capturing every sound: the creak of a branch under the weight of snow, the distant cry of a snowy owl, the whisper of the wind that seemed to carry voices. The familiar sounds soon became ominous. The creaks no longer seemed random, they were stealthy footsteps. The whispers of the wind sounded like warnings. Suddenly, a harsh and savage scent hit his snout, a predator. Before he could react, a pair of icy amber eyes regarded him from a thick branch, a short distance away. A boreal lynx, enormous, with ear tufts and claws flashing in the gloom, loomed over him. Its gaze wasn't one of curiosity, but of hunger. Kael immediately faced him, ruffling up all the fur on his back to make himself appear larger, while a deep, continuous snarl emanated from his throat. He wasn't looking for a fight, but he wouldn't run like prey. The lynx, agile as a ghost, leapt from its perch with devastating speed, but Kael, whose blood was pure speed and agility, dashed to the side. In the last microsecond, the beast fell to the snow, where he had been an instant before, and without waiting for its next move, Kael turned and ran. He didn't run in panic, but with ferocious purpose. He dodged trees, leapt over fallen logs, and plunged into thorny thickets, feeling the heat of the lynx's breath chasing him for a moment, until, little by little, the sounds of pursuit faded behind him. Only then did he stop, panting, his heart hammering in his chest, alive and more alert than ever. The roaring river. The dull, steady roar guided Kael, like an audible beacon. After emerging from the oppressive dendum of the forest, he encountered a spectacle of pure power. The Lena River, swollen with the spring thaw. It wasn't a river, it was a torrent of brown and foamy water crashing furiously against sharp black rocks, throwing icy spray into the air. The far bank seemed a world away. Kael sniffed the air determinedly, the scent of the sea. His invisible compass was stronger here. Coming from downriver, he knew turning back wasn't an option. He began to trot along the bank, his eyes scanning the liquid barrier for a solution. After several minutes, his perseverance was rewarded. Further upstream, a colossal ancient fir tree, felled by some past storm, lay across the raging waters. It formed a natural bridge, but it was treacherous. The trunk was covered in a smooth and treacherous layer of ice and slippery moss. It was a path of faith. With his heart in his mouth, Kael leaped to the base of the trunk. His powerful claws unfurled, gripping the rotten wood with all his strength. He inched forward inch by inch, maintaining a precarious balance. The roar of the river was deafening, and the vertigo of seeing the turbulent waters roar beneath his paws was a test of his courage. Halfway across, the ominous crack of a smaller branch under his hind leg rang out like a gunshot. The wood gave way. His body teetered dangerously toward the void, his front legs desperately scraping at the ice. For a terrible moment, his entire weight hung over the edge. With superhuman effort, pushing off with his hind legs, he managed to drag himself back to the safety of the center of the log. Without pausing to tremble, with renewed determination, he completed the crossing. With one last bold leap to the opposite shore, once safely back, he shook violently, throwing ice crystals and water into the air. A sea lion that had conquered his first ocean. The encounter with the wolves. The territory smelled different, older, and less domesticated. Kael knew it even before his eyes confirmed the threat. The scent of wolf marking, intense and challenging, permeated the air. From among the fir trees, silent as ghosts, emerged three slender and cunning figures, Siberian gray wolves with fur bleached by winter, and piercing yellow eyes that showed no mercy. They were the law of these lands, and Kael was an intruder. They spread out, blocking his path with terrifying efficiency. The leader, a male with a deep scar running across his muzzle, took a step forward, baring his fangs in a low, continuous growl that promised violence. Kael stood his ground. He didn't want to fight. Every fiber of his being yearned to continue his run, but to retreat would be to admit defeat and become prey. He remembered the lessons of his pack elders. Stance is everything. He pricked his ears, raised his tail, and bristled his ruff, baring his own teeth, white and sharp. The wolves began to circle him, a deadly ballet. The tension was palpable. The air was charged with the electricity of an imminent attack. In a moment of pure instinctive clarity, Kael did what no wild wolf, governed by the seriousness of survival, would expect. Instead of a growl, he let out a loud, clear, and almost playful bark, the same one he used to invite the village dogs to run. Confusion paralyzed the wolves for a crucial second, their heads cocked, bewildered by the absurd sound. It was their only chance. Kael spun around and didn't run straight ahead, but charged uphill toward a scree slope, a terrain of loose rocks and steep drops where his agility, honed pulling sleds on impossible terrain, made him the master. The wolves, recovered from their surprise, chased him for a short distance, but soon stopped, frustrated, watching the strange gray dog climb with a grace they couldn't match. Kael had won not with strength, but with ingenuity. The Cave of Bones. The sky, until then clear, turned a threatening leaden. In a matter of minutes, the wind howled with a new ferocity, raising curtains of snow that blinded and chilled the soul. A sudden blizzard, treacherous as the Arctic itself, had descended upon him. Visibility dropped to zero. Kael, fighting a wind that seemed to want to knock him down, knew that continuing was suicidal. With his nose to the ground, he sniffed desperately until he found what he was looking for, the trail of still air emanating from a crevice Between two massive rock formations, he squeezed through the narrow opening and found himself in the absolute stillness of a cave. The contrast was eerie, but the peace was soon replaced by foreboding, a rancid, ancient, and thick smell. The smell of centuries-old death filled the cavern. When his eyes adjusted to the dimness, the reason for that smell was revealed. There, in the center of the cave, lay the colossal skeleton of a cave bear. The ribcage was like a vault of oak ribs, the skull the size of a boulder. It was a titan from a bygone age, a king whose kingdom had vanished. The wind howled at the cave entrance, like a chorus of mournful spirits. Kael, shivering more from the ancient chill than from the cold, huddled in a corner, huddling himself. He dreamed. He dreamed of packs of primitive wolves, hunting under violent auroras, of great mammoths, whose footsteps shook the earth, and of the first humans, small and brave, who shared their fire with the first dogs. He dreamed that he was one of them, strong, free, and part of something much larger than himself. The dream wasn't one of fear, but of a profound belonging. He realized that his journey wasn't a childish escape, but the answer to a call that resonated in every beat of his husky heart. It was a search for the heritage imprinted in his blood. The Aurora Guide. When he woke up, the silence was absolute. The blizzard had subsided as suddenly as it had come. Kael stretched and crawled toward the cave entrance. What he saw took his breath away. The black sky exploded in a spectacle of pure magic. Gigantic curtains of emerald, purple, and pink light danced above his head, waving and rippling, as if a god were painting the firmament. It was the northern lights. For Kael, it wasn't just a light phenomenon. It was a living being, a guide. The lights didn't just shine, they flowed. They seemed to converge and head north, like a celestial river, pointing the way. He took this as the sign it was, with renewed energy that seemed to flow from the lights themselves. He broke into a run. The snow at his feet was no longer just white. It glittered with a million diamond-like diamonds reflecting the dawn, transforming the tundra into a sea of stars. His fatigue faded, replaced by pure euphoria. He ran not just with his paws, but with his spirit. He felt, or wanted to feel, that the spirits of all the huskies and wolves that had existed before him were running beside him, encouraging him, guiding him toward his final destination. He was no longer alone. He was part of the dance of the universe. The Eagle Cliff. The dawn guided him unerringly to the edge of his known world. Kael stopped dead in his tracks, his feet on the edge of a precipice that made him catch his breath. Before him, the ground crumbled into an immense cliff of black rock, dropping sheerly into a vast dark ocean. Waves crashed furiously against the base, and the sound was a constant, powerful roar. The scent of sea salt was now overwhelming, penetrating. He had arrived, the end of his journey. But a fierce frustration filled him. The cliff was impassable, a natural wall that stretched for miles in both directions. Had he run so far only to find a dead end? He sniffed along the edge desperately, searching for a way out, a descent, anything. Suddenly, a huge, silent shadow passed over him, eclipsing for a second the lights of dawn. A stellar sea eagle, a majestic bird with wings as long as Kael's body, rose from the depths of the cliff. In its formidable beak, it carried a silver fish that glittered in the ghostly light. The eagle perched on a nearby rock outcrop and turned its head, with piercing black eyes, toward the dog. It watched him with an intense and ancestral curiosity, as if recognizing the spark of adventure in him. Then, as if it had made a decision, it uttered a sharp, piercing scream that cut through the air. And then, it launched itself into the void. But it didn't fly out to sea. Instead, he began to plummet down, following the line. of a frozen waterfall, a gigantic tongue of blue and white ice that descended down the cliff face like a giant staircase. This was the way. The eagle was showing him the route. With a courage born from the eagle's very talons, Kael began the descent. Every step was a test, every grip of his talons on the ancient ice a prayer. He followed the eagle's trail, descending slowly toward the roar of the ocean. The beach of secrets. Kael's paws, sore and steady, finally touched the coarse, cold sand of the beach. He had conquered the cliff. The roar of the sea was now an enveloping thunder. The waves, tall and crowned with white foam, crashed with primal force, carrying treasures and secrets with them. Kael ran along the waterline, his paws splashed by the icy water, feeling an indescribable thrill. He ran like a puppy, chasing the receding waves and fleeing the advancing ones. The salty wind whipped his face, and he smelled it deeply. Seaweed, unknown life, absolute freedom. He had answered the call. As he explored the deserted beach, his eye trained to detect the slightest movement. In a blanket of white snow, spotted an irregular shape, half buried in the sand, near some rocks, he approached and began to dig, with determination. What he unearthed took his breath away. It was a mammoth tusk, ancient and heavy, its ivory softened and polished by millennia of ice and water, but most striking were the engravings. Spirals, animal tracks, and lines that told an epic story carved by human hands countless generations ago. For Kael, it wasn't just a bone, it was a treasure. A message from the past. It was tangible proof that others, long before him, had also undertaken incredible journeys and left their mark. He decided that this would be his trophy, the symbol he would take home, to show Anya that the call of the wind was real, and that his reward was history itself. The way home. With the tusk secured firmly in his mouth, a new scent filled his mind and became his new compass, the scent of Anya, of the smoky wood of his hearth, of the warm food. The outward journey had been one of discovery. The return journey was one of purpose. He knew the way now, not by sight, but by instinct. His body, though tired, moved with a new efficiency, that of a seasoned explorer. He avoided the cave of bones, recalling his dream with respect, but without needing to relive it. He found a place where the Lena River widened and flowed less furiously, and swam boldly across, pushing the tusk in front of him. Like a life preserver, he circled the wolf territory with a wide margin, moving with a silence that would honor the lynx itself. Every step, every heartbeat brought him closer to home. The image in his mind was no longer of the vast ocean, but of the crackling wood stove, the heat emanating from the wooden floor, the sound of Anya's soft voice, and the smell of her metal cooking pot. The adventure had been wonderful, a fire that had enlivened his spirit, but now he understood, with absolute clarity, that the true destination was not where you were going, but the home you were returning to, and the story you carried with you to share. The return of the explorer. The first light of true dawn, a flash of gold, promising a new day, tinted the sky pink and orange as Kael made out the familiar and beloved outlines of Yakutskoy. The snow on the roofs glimmered softly, fatigue faded, replaced by an anticipation that gave wings to his paws. He ran the last distance, excitement growing with each step. He reached the wooden door of his cabin and, with the tusk still in his mouth, he scraped gently with a paw, emitting a small, tired whimper. The seconds of waiting felt like hours. Then, the door creaked open, and there was Anya, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and marked with worry and undried tears. Seeing him, her expression collapsed into such profound relief that she almost fainted. Then, she broke into a radiant smile that lit up the dawn more than the sun. "Kael, My God, where have you gone? My brave madman, she exclaimed, her voice cracking with emotion. Kneeling in the snow, heedless of the cold, to embrace him tightly, Kael rubbed himself against her, licking her face effusively, waving his tail like a frantic fan, dropping the ancient mammoth tusk at her feet with a thud. Anya took it with trembling hands, gazing at the ancient carvings, in pure awe. She couldn't understand its literal meaning, but she understood perfectly the message. In Kael's proud and tired blue eyes, I went, I explored, I missed you, and I brought you this. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but now they were of joy and wonder. She hugged him tighter, burying her face in his warm fur. Never be gone for so long again, she whispered. Kael curled up at her feet, exhausted but completely whole. At peace, he had answered the call of the wind, had lived his great adventure, and had found, untouched and loving, his way home. As Anya prepared a feast for him, Kael closed his eyes. He dreamed, but not of wolves, auroras, or endless seas. He dreamed of the calm, safe warmth of his home, of Enya's hand stroking his back, and of the deep satisfaction of an explorer who, after crossing horizons, has found the place where he always belonged. The one-night stand was over, but his spirit of exploration and the treasure that proved it would live on forever. The end.